My name is Amelia Bowerly, and I'm the senior product designer in Monitor. And today I'm going to talk through facilitating design on my team. So a few months ago, something kind of interesting happened that changed the way I think about my role as a designer on my team. And in order to really explain that to all of you, I'll have to give a little bit of backstory, and I'll try to keep it as brief as possible. We had spent many months, maybe 3 to 6 months, refining a design for building alert integrations using a stepper. And we had examined other products' workflows as part of this design work, and we worked with product and with engineering, and finally we had come up with a proposal to offer a series of integration options. And building the integration itself with a new stepper component, which we were also going to build. And we did solution validation on the design, and we made a series of updates to the design even after that, based on feedback from other stakeholders. And finally, we had something that we felt we had been reviewed by all the right people, and that we had a solid degree of confidence that was the right direction. And the new milestone was going to start in a couple of days. And we were meant to start building this whole integration builder out. And it was going to be the entirety of the team's work for the upcoming milestone. So it was kind of full steam ahead. However, for a handful of reasons, as happens sometimes in this work, that carefully laid plan did not happen. We didn't build the design that we had been working on and carefully testing for many months. And instead, we opted for something that would be a kind of a quicker and more MVC approach. And why? Why did that happen? I mean, this does happen. It's part of the process sometimes, but the direction essentially changed. The multiple integration options we had been considering offering to people were kind of set aside for the medium term, and we decided to only focus on 2 of the options. So instead of needing to present a whole handful of options, now we only had 2. And also the steps that had been discrete and were the reason we chose to try a stepper, they were combined. So that suddenly we were left with a stepper with maybe 1 or 2 steps in it. So suddenly like, the stepper component that we were going to use didn't really make sense either. So a lot of things were kind of coming together to change the way we were thinking about it. In addition, it would have taken us quite a lot of time and effort to build what we had been planning. And that did all make sense, but with these changes, that amount of effort started to no longer make as much sense. And so we had to instead go with more of a minimum viable change, which ended up being a very long form, which you can kind of see on the screen now. So at the time, and I think Justin can confirm, I had a lot of really big feelings about this change and this situation. I felt like there was a ton of pressure on me at that moment because the entire team was going to start working on something and we didn't know what they were going to be working on, and it was in just a few days. And on a personal level, I was sad to lose like many months of work for me. I try to put a lot of time and care into what I do. So to not have it be used at the end of the day, it was hard. It was hard to lose that work. But the biggest concern for me was that I didn't have as much confidence that the end result, the sort of long form that we were building, would be usable. We did have a quick test of the revised design with an internal stakeholder, but I hadn't seen it tested and seen it in action in the way I had seen the other design. So I didn't know if it would all work in the way that we wanted to. So all of these things kind of combined to make the situation kind of stressful. But thankfully, that wasn't the end of the story, and that's why I'm here to talk about this today. Something kind of amazing happened instead. As a team, we managed to go from what could have been like a full desk flip situation, at least for me, to something kind of great. And I wanted to talk about how and why. So one thing that I noticed was that after we changed direction, the engineers on our team really stepped up and they started thinking like designers. What do I mean by that? As we were building out and testing the new feature, the engineers on the team were noticing that the experience wasn't what it should be. They were spotting things that were confusing or unclear to them when they were building it, and they worried that people would have trouble figuring the feature out. And they started making issues, highlighting the different concessions we were having to make to the experience for technical reasons, and started advocating for the people who would actually be using the feature, which was kind of amazing. And what you're seeing on the screen now is one such example issue. And the engineer here outlined all of the things she thought that weren't great in what was being built, and outlined possible ways to smooth out some of those bumps in the experience. And we all then worked together to negotiate the solutions, given the technical complexities of what we were building. Remarkably, it wasn't just a single engineer that was helping with this work. The whole team seemed to be joining in. People were actively proposing ideas, even sometimes designs. They were grabbing components from pajamas and making mock-ups in the browser and posting them for discussion with the team. And they were advocating for various proposals and raising handfuls of excellent questions. Like together, we were all negotiating improvements to the feature in a way that tried to balance the different technical considerations and what people who were actually using the feature would need to use the feature. And it was kind of amazing. A situation that could have been really bad for our team and for our feature turned out in a way that I didn't even expect. And this is really great. And I don't want to undermine that at all. This was amazing. But I did have a moment where I sort of had a moment's pause. There was a moment that I thought, okay, if everyone on the team is a designer now, and everyone helps with proposing UI solutions and even with making mock-ups, where does that leave me? Like, what's my role in the team now? Like, I'm not proud that I had this thought, and I don't think it aligns with how I want to operate in the world, much less on my team. But I'm human. I admit that I did have that thought. And that helped me to start to re-examine what it means to be a designer on my team. A couple of years ago, I did an MA version of a degree program in something called collaborative design. And in that program, I learned lots of different techniques for facilitating discussions, like running different design exercises and working together with diverse groups of stakeholders. And the value of all of that kind of work was something that was really deeply ingrained in me and also really important to me. And yet, in this instance, I realized that I was holding on to a really outdated version of what it means to be a designer in my head. A designer as someone who comes up with the ideas and proposes solutions and creates all the mocks. Like, part of me was still holding on to the idea that that was work that I owned. And until that moment, I didn't realize that there was a part of me that thought this way. And that made me realize that I needed to expand my notion of what a designer could or maybe should be. And I think from that point forward, something really shifted in my head. And I feel like that experience was sort of a good ego check for me. And I really started thinking about myself as more of a design facilitator on my team, as someone who works to create spaces for collaboration and who facilitates that collaboration so that together we can work towards a solution as a team. And as I was putting together this presentation and trying to verbalize this experience, I think that this point about designers as facilitators probably seems really obvious, but there was a shift in my thinking here that really did seem important to capture and to share here. I previously thought of design facilitation as more of a discrete activity, kind of like a one-off workshop that you hold with Post-its and whiteboards, and you run different activities and then come up with an idea that is kind of developed separately by the designer. But I think this moment with the team taught me that design facilitation could be something more than that. As designers, we can be more than just people who make the mock-ups, and we can instead help to design a culture in which people can really show up and share and do their best work. And that's, I guess, what I'm meaning here when I'm saying that I want to be a design facilitator on my team. And I think there were a lot of different things that led to this shift in our team, and I'm happy to discuss that more in Q&A if you'd like. But I do notice that now we're all working together in a different way. People on the team have continued to really proactively raise ideas and suggestions for UX improvements, and everyone has been very vocally advocating for user experience on the team. And issues meant to improve the experience are also being championed by people other than me, which means they're much more likely to be implemented. And all of these shifts ultimately make my job so much easier, because it means we're all keeping our eyes open for things that aren't quite right yet. And we're all working together to find ideas for making things better. I've also been trying a few different exercises with the team as a way of engaging them beyond just asking questions and issues. For our long-term vision mocks, we ran an async critique and tried out an elevation exercise where people gave feedback on 3 different levels: satellite, very abstract level; airplane level, not too in the weeds, but still kind of above the ground a little bit; and then ground level, very much in the weeds feedback. And the goal here was just to get people thinking about and interacting with proposals in a different way, and also to really just help the team feel like they were part of defining the vision for our feature set. It was a fun experiment, and it was just one experiment, but I hope to try out other ways of getting the team to engage and share their thoughts and ideas. At any rate, this experience felt important to share in this forum because I don't know if we always have the space to talk about this kind of stuff. So I wanted to share this presentation kind of as a way of asking all of you too, if you've had experiences like this one, and also to dig a little bit more into how everyone else is feeling about this idea of designer as facilitator. I'd really love to hear all of your thoughts. Also, if you have techniques that you've successfully used to facilitate more of a design culture within your team, I'd really love to hear about them as well. And that's it for the presentation. Thanks for listening. I'd love to hear if you have any thoughts or questions. And if you don't feel confident or willing or wanting to talk in this forum, please send me a Slack message or make a coffee chat, because I definitely would love to hear more about what people think. So yeah, that's it for me. Any questions?
Thank you, Amelia. There are questions, but there are a lot of read-onlys. I think that it would be pretty awesome if you read-only folks could maybe summarize what you were wanting to read-only, because I think there's some really awesome points there.
Yeah, I'll go first. I just think this is so cool. I love the turn it took into being like, you know, from a project and MVC and, you know, very feature focused, process focused into this, you know, wow, everybody's a designer now, and where does that leave me? I really respect and appreciate your vulnerability in sharing all of that. I would have felt exactly the same way. And I'm sure that, you know, all designers at some point have or will come across a point where it's like, you know, you feel a little bit threatened when other people, other designers even, but engineers, product managers, you know, come up with ideas. And I know I've had this thought of like, oh, I should have thought of that. I should have been the one because I'm the trained designer. And so it's a hard, it's humbling, right? When we want other team members to think like designers sometimes, but then we also want to be the DRI, and we want to be like the experts. And so, yeah, I just really appreciate you sharing all of that. And I think it's extremely relatable, whether we all talk about it or not. And I think we should be talking about it more. So I think a really important lesson to learn on any team is that flexibility that you kind of spoke to. Is, okay, you know, they're running away with ideas, and this is all great. What can I do here? If not make mock-ups, what can my role be here to kind of help bring this all together, ask the right questions? I just think that's so cool. And it's so exciting to see how in these showcases, we don't just always talk about features and what went right. Because I think this is the most valuable lessons to learn, is what went wrong or how we were challenged. And so I just think this is so cool that you shared all of that. So thank you.
Oh, thanks for that feedback. It's good to know that I'm not the only one.
Definitely not. No.
Has these moments. So thank you also for sharing that. And I actually don't have the doc open. I can open it. Are there any other questions?
Yeah, Mike had a nice sentiment too.
Yeah, I was trying to catch up on my OKRs this week, and I just happened to watch that course yesterday, and I mean, a lot of what is suggested in that course is a lot of what you're doing, you know, building the inroads with the engineers, and, you know, inserting yourself as part of that team, and helping to build that trust and that relationship. And ultimately, like, you know, we're building one product, we're all on the same team. So if we can help, we can help. And by working together as a team, if they can help, then they can help. And it's great. If we're all just headed in the same direction, then it's wonderful.
Yeah, agreed. Yeah. And I think, and I don't know why it took me so long to get up to speed in that, but yeah, definitely something feels like it shifted into place, and I do see that in a different way now. And it doesn't matter where the idea comes from. And if I feel like it has to come from me or something, that's a lot of pressure on me, and I'm not going to come up with all the right ideas. The team knows things that I don't know, and I need to make space for that. But it took me a moment for sure.
Then Marcel linked to a nice Jared Spool Medium post. He's always worth reading. Daniel, did you want to say something specific about that, Marcel? Go ahead.
No, I just wanted to quickly say I've been previously in the position of consultant and being a design thinking facilitator, and we gave week-long workshops for super diverse teams where basically every kind of function was in the room, and really seeing them over the course of the week going more and more into thinking about the user first and seeing how this affected teams in the long term. It really shows the value of this mindset, and it really showed up whenever we visited these teams then, like 2 or 3 months afterwards. You can directly see the impact this kind of thinking has. So it's great that you brought it in.
Cool, thanks. And thanks for that article link. I'll check that out. Appreciate it.
Daniel?
I was just going to add that I've also felt this way, especially early in my career. I had, you know, the feeling of if somebody else is challenging me or taking my job from me, what reason do I have to be here? Am I going to lose my job? But then as I grew, I realized it's not just design that we're doing. We have to take all this work and all this stuff that everyone else has provided and try and validate it and see, you know, if there is a trend, if there's research that needs to be done around this. So thinking more from the UX or UI design and going into that product design tier, what's now the descriptor we're using for our industry or our positions that we do here.
Yeah, definitely. I feel like maybe that's a trajectory that we all go through as we grow as designers, like almost taking the sort of the I out of the equation and just finding what's best for the experience. And yeah, I feel like that's definitely something that I'm constantly being challenged to learn and grow and do more of.
Yeah, for sure. Camelia, last point, and then we're going to move on to Becca.
Yeah, I just want to say that it's really encouraging. Thank you for sharing. And like maybe something's helpful when I'm facing those kind of situations, a lot of feedbacks, I'll just imagine myself as a PM. So like I need to really set up hard timeline, like deadlines, like now we gather feedbacks and then like we stop and I will make decisions, like the final decisions, which design is the best and something. Just yeah, I feel like we don't really treat decision making as a kind of task for designers, but I really think it is, and it's not an easy one to make a decision as we go with this like approach.
Yeah, definitely not easy for me. And I like that idea of thinking about yourself as the VM and just kind of just making decisions in that hat, wearing that hat instead. Maybe that helps shift things a little bit in your head, so it makes it easier to make some of those calls. I appreciate that. Thanks.